here. It was good timing on the music. The downbeat hit like right on the zero. Very nice. All right, folks. Hello. Um, Performative YouTube form demonstration. My name is Dan Reynolds. This is the Tech Audio Chat. I'm joined by Eric Buchholz. And this is where we talk about tech audio, game audio, technical game audio. Yeah,
Sometimes.
I I so hate the like standard YouTube. Like, there's such a formula now. I watch a lot of YouTube, too much YouTube, and there's such a like strict form for like quick introductions and state the name, and you have to give your audience a nickname, and like it's a whole, and then like you have to have one of those like title cards that's like like reacting to something.
You have an audience name.
Yeah, they're just folk. I don't know. Do I have
No,
an audience? No.
it's the Dan fam.
The Dan fam. That's terrible. That's really
No,
bad.
come-
Please don't call yourselves that.
Every video, you have your intro.
Oh, I do say that, right? I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's like
it's
my colloquial speech-isms.
it is your intro that
Hey,
you're
fam.
going on about how YouTube has all these intros, but yet you have one, and now you have you have an audience name that I just coined because
You know, I had a comment that was like, I was done when you said fam. Like, it was like they rejected fam so specifically that was it. That's how that was like. They didn't even make it 2 seconds into my video.
Well, they had to type the comment, so they were clearly there a little bit longer than. I don't know how fast they can type, but I bet they stayed.
They stayed. Yeah, maybe.
They
Yeah,
had
it's.
to.
Yeah, I don't know where that. Well, let me think. That probably comes from. Well, I used to say folks sometimes. I think. Hi, folks. I don't know. I just like a generic group. You know what it is? Is I just think that it's just nicer to be friendly. There's like a general assumption if someone's part of the family. Well, family is kind of complicated anyway. So
The game audio family.
the game audio family, yeah, I do say that too sometimes. I think on my social media, it's like, hey, game audio family, fam, game audio friends. Yeah, I don't know. But it's not like something wacky like, hey. I can't
You don't even have one.
Yeah. Anyway, for those who are joining in super confused because this is their first time joining, this is a technical audio chat. It's kind of like a hangout where we hang out and we talk about game audio or do game audio right in front of your eyes. Why we do this is inexplicable. I spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, at least doing this. Why do it 2 more hours a week?
Because we're crazy.
It is a little bit of that. There is a little sort of mania there, I think.
It's also good learning. Like I've learned a lot about just state tree, and
Yeah.
I am not touching state tree tonight. I noticed that I was starting to like kind of loathe Thursday evenings, and it's not
Yeah.
because of you. It's not because of you. It's I think it's because of state tree, and
Yeah.
I'm a little bit over it at this point. I'll come back around to it, but uh, I want a better use case for it. I think my grenade effect that I was working on isn't really a stateful thing, you know, but
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it might be a sort of. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Where it's not necessarily like a strong or complex state scenario where you would bring in like a whole system to run it.
it's not how I would do it
Yeah.
in a real scenario. I was mostly just wanting to like kind of force it into state tree and see see how
See,
it worked,
see how
and
it's
maybe that
done.
would open up some neural pathways in my brain to think of an actual use for it. But
Yeah, I had a so I agree with you. My thing, however, and this is you like people who are coming into this video can probably attest to. My sort of tension around this time of the week is having something prepared because there's like a whole like I don't know sort of expectation that I've done my homework in advance, and a lot of my videos are not prepared, and a lot of my video presentations are specifically long only because I have done zero or near zero preparation. Because that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to put into video production. For people who haven't tried it, is it takes a lot of work. It's very demanding, and you can get really good at it, which I am not. And at being good at it, obviously people that becomes a job too.
I think you just need some T-shirts or something, like sell some merch.
Well, that's interesting. I'm not above that. Um, there is like I do have a sort of bizarre contract with my employer that says I can't moonlight. Um, so I've got no moonlighting clause, and that might be considered moonlighting. uh,
Free T-shirts.
Free T-shirts. Yeah, I don't know about that either. I don't want to. That's yeah. I mean,
Start like a Patreon.
a
Well, maybe
pay
that's moonlighting
a
too.
Patreon. Yeah, a Patreon at cost T-shirts. I don't know. Donation. That's one of the things actually. Like I put in my comments on these videos. If you do want to support, I get paid really well, so don't worry about it. But I do link to a charity that I'm involved in, and you can donate all of your money to them at reasonable levels. Like don't harm yourself. So yeah, I mean that maybe I could
You
do
want
something like that.
Do you want to plug the charity or?
I it's the Game Audio Diversity Alliance. There's a link to the website in the video description, and yeah, it's pretty cool. They're a 501c3, and basically they just support diverse folks trying to break into this pretty aggressive industry, mostly through scholarships, actually. So, yeah, it's been really great. I've been working with them for almost 5 years now.
Nice.
So,
I see often around like what is it, like GDC or GameSound Con or like some of those events where there's they'll send some folks a badge or something. Or...
yeah. So we do. So part of the scholarship. So there's a few different scholarships that and financial assistance that they help out with. One is to send folks to the School of Video Game Audio. There's a sort of program that we've worked out with Leonard at the School of Video Game Audio that sort of gives people a primer. It's like a WISE program and then an Unreal program. And sort of total 8 months of sort of tech education. By the way, if anyone is here and they're like, hey, I am interested in, taking this seriously, maybe if you're curious about game audio, but you've got money to burn on your education, then School of Video Game Audio is actually a pretty good one. I would check them out. They're very reasonably priced. It's an online, completely asynchronous, and Leonard is really good at keeping his curriculum up to date. We talk all the time actually about new stuff in Unreal, and it's yeah.
That's really important though, like just keeping up to date because the industry and the tech moves so fast that
It's hard. It's a really
yeah.
So for people who don't realize, I actually worked at a school teaching video game audio and music production, like beat making and stuff like that, for about 5 years. And that sector, that particular type of school, the classification of the school, was very, I would consider, predatory to a certain degree. And but in particular, this school had a fairly toxic feel at the top. And when they laid off my department, I was very happy to go. And I had those, that, you know, as you do when you come away from like a really bad situation, and especially with employers, you're like, how can I get my vengeance? And my vengeance was like, I'm going to give this information away for free. That was what I was like. I was like, I will scuttle the whole enterprise by like just because I was designing curriculum for them, you know, and I was like, hey, I made all this stuff. I could just make curriculum for free and give it out. But what I realized, as you do, like when you have those moments of we'll call it sort of small-minded vengeance, where you're sort of the least of yourself. You're like, you sort of have the like lucid aftershock where you're like, oh, wait a second, that's actually a lot of work. And it's like full-time job to maintain a good game audio curriculum.
Oh yeah.
It's just a lot of this industry moves so fast.
Even just documentation and
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's like people always say, oh, like Unreal's docs are out of date or, you know, hard to find and stuff, and it's getting better, especially with like the EDC and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's just we're moving, like things move so fast in this industry
So
that
fast.
yeah.
And it's one of those challenges because docs they're not free, like time wise. They take work to do it right. Not everyone's a writer. Also, this is something I have a background in writing, but not everyone has that, and sometimes it's more or less work for someone to do. And so it's like, do you take like your whatever very proficient engineer and just say stop making new
Right,
features, and just spend today doing documentation for like that's, you know, that there's like sort of cost evaluation that has to be done there.
Writing code and writing like words
Yeah.
is so different.
It's very
I recently I wrote the blog post for getting started with the Metasound view models.
oh right.
And that's not, I wouldn't call that documentation so much, because it's a pretty hand-holdy walkthrough of like step one, like like very basic stuff, but that's you know, kind of the point of walkthrough is not really to, and this is why I don't like walkthroughs myself, is because they mostly just force feed you the information of how to do X thing in as few steps as possible, and it doesn't really get into the why or like the understanding the actual like the designs and stuff. But I did it anyway, just so folks can have something to look at and an example of how they can take it farther, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's not a bad starting point, right? Like if you've got a rough end-to-end perspective on this new thing, whatever it is, right? Then when you start digging into more reference-oriented information, you have a sort of landmark that you can reference to, like, understand how does this relate to this, how does this relate to
Yeah,
this, or how
a
is this
baseline.
yeah, exactly. I did something with State Tree. Oh, that's what I was going to say. My State Tree, because speaking of preparation, I sort of spiral off here. That's another reason why it's very difficult to do like a very nice video with me, because I just go off. Like it just.
Well, that's why stream is a good format for it. So.
It's a descriptive format. We'll call the thing coming out of my mouth a stream as well. But it was me like being sort of feeling like I need to be 100% prepared for today. And working late on State Tree, the State Tree music thing that I was tooling around with last time we all got together. And I had a kind of revelation. I was like, what we actually need is a Metasound schema for State Tree.
Ooh.
And when I get into my State Tree, I'll describe what I have visioned, and I don't know how possible it is, but there's some cool things about the way. I think there's some cool stuff about State Tree as a wrapper around this context object, because it's basically like a interesting manager, like a state manager for this context object. And so I think that there might be an interesting opportunity to think about something that I haven't brought up at work. So y'all get to see the crazy. I have crazy ideas all the time, and that is sometimes welcomed, sometimes not. It's sort of a mood thing, I think.
You got to roll the dice every now and then.
You really do. I honestly, I think that's really important. Like, I think I am sort of more of a spaghetti on the wall kind of person. And I feel like I'm probably presenting myself poorly when I am quieter. That is to say, I feel like it's more beneficial to take the opportunity to say the thing rather than sort of keep it to yourself, as long as it's not offensive. Use your best judgment. But I found I haven't had a lot of success in scenarios where I was modest or quiet. And this is just sort of a personality thing I do. Like when I'm in a situation where I'm intimidated, maybe, or sort of like at a social situation where I'm intimidated by someone, I sometimes switch to like listening mostly mode, and so I keep my mouth shut. I don't think that always works out for me. This is something that I was thinking about right before we got on here, actually.
It's good to have opinions and.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I think also there's in a creative industry, a lot of what we bring to the table are our ideas. And so the opinions are oftentimes strangely enough, the substance of the matter. So, yeah.
Do you want to talk about opinions, or do you want to? Do you want to go into the stuff that you stayed up late preparing?
Yeah, we could do both. I think there's a way we can handle both of these. All right, we can get into it. We can dig into it. We've got two people. We've had two people the entire time, but not the same two people. It's very interesting to me. All right, so what? Basically, one of the things that I had an idea last night when I was digging into the State Tree thing for music, because if y'all recall, where did I put it? My original. Oh, I put it. Oh, I'll put it in here. So yeah, if you recall, I had this idea about having State Tree manage the different cues at a high level, and then also maybe some sub thing, like maybe sub trees or something. That's sort of the approach that I started taking, was just laying everything out.
It's a lot of states.
It's a lot, yeah, and it's not really even. I think at the end of it, we were sort of talking about maybe doing sub trees, But what I decided to do is just sort of. This stuff is very simple. What I decided to do is just sort of stick to the combat space and revisit the State Tree design. And as I usually do, I just did everything in a test directory And so here's my state tree.
It's a lot simpler.
Mm. It's managing one queue. So, if folks recall, I had this queue for the combat. I extracted the music from the Valley of the Ancient project. And this is the combat queue for when you enter the arena space. Then you go into basically here, you enter the arena space, and then you sit in this sort of ambient loop until you trigger um, the cinematic introduction to the golem, the little nanic golem,
Yeah.
and then you immediately enter combat. Now, the original idea behind the low, medium, and high combat layers, and I say this because I was part of the development process, was the you hit the golem multiple times. You have to. I believe the first time is on the shoulder or arm or something like that, and then the second time is on the stomach, and then you hit the golem in the head, and he sort of regains these kind of very typical boss battle scenario where you've got like a glowing spot on the robot that has to be hit
Classic.
in order to move to the next stage, and you have to sort of hit those in sequence before the robot recovers, etc. And so the original idea was to have this sort of low, medium, and high intensity, which I think we ended up not exactly using for various reasons, which were more related to the mix and the sound and all that sort of stuff. It just became very cluttered. But the content shipped, and so I sort of reconstructed that concept here. And so I have a low, medium, and high, and you can sort of just traverse between them. And these are in a beat synchronous set, and they in the meta sound. So it's all one meta sound that's managing all of this. And I believe I set it on a bar switch, so the combat cues can switch on the top of any bar during the loop. And then at any time during this time, you can transition to the ending section of the music, and then the cue ends. So I've essentially reconstructed that here in the state tree. Now, I think what's important, let me start loading up some of the things here. So, boop, boop, boop. Yeah, we'll do this person and this person. Just get this person and this person. You are under no obligation to anthropomorphize your blueprints, so take this person with a grain of salt.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? See, I told you, I say the thing, sometimes the crazy thing.
And yeah, now
Sometimes
I
it
need
works,
to
sometimes
ask.
it doesn't work. Yeah, so so with state tree, basically what you want is you have a context actor, and the context actor is your is the actor that's hosting the state tree component in this case. So the schema is centered around this one, having this particular schema, which is the component schema, has a single context actor, and if you notice, if you look and you add the state tree component to your actor, you will actually see Oh, it didn't do this. Okay, maybe not. Maybe that's just confusion about it. Anyway, sorry, I thought maybe the category was preloaded as context, but no, it's just default. So that's fine. But the what you want to do is you'll want to set your class to the class, to the actual actor class, or the super class. But the reason I'm doing this to the class is I want the member content to be exposed. So, in other words, if I have a some kind of parameter, let's say I have an enter condition. Let's do just a bool compare. So here I'm doing a Boolean comparison, and there's an input parameter. This input parameter is unmapped. And if I compile, it's going to complain. It's going to be like, hey, you haven't mapped this parameter. And so what I can do is I can select parameter from either the list of parameters here or a member variable on my actor, my context actor. And so what you'll see is that this parameter data here is static parameter data. In other words, it's not dynamic. But the context actor is where you will store all of your dynamic parameter data. So this is all. So in other words, your state tree is being managed by data evaluations, and the data evaluation can either reference this sort of static parameter data here under the parameters list, or it can be data that is on your actor instance. And so if you have data that is specifically dynamic, in other words, it's going to change during runtime, then that is the place where you will do your evaluation. And so let me get rid of this. Oops, here we go. Delete. We compile. We're back to where we were before. And so if we look at some of these, let's just look at play as an example. This play state traverses very quickly. It's a state. And the selection behavior is try enter. Try enter. And then what I do on here is I just have a very quick task that is run. And we'll get into tasks and how I set up my tasks for this particular use case. And the tasks the way that I set up the tasks for this use case is very specific around controlling and managing a meta sound. So that's where I sort of got into the idea. I was like, hey, if I had, like, I could probably, like, in my mind, I could probably voice specific changes to the way that state tree works that would allow me to more easily interact with my meta sound data. And so in our case, we have this sort of situation where we have dynamic gameplay data that is on our actor, and then we have state tree sort of managing and interpreting this gameplay data and then doing things to the meta sound instance that is playing. And then we have the meta sound, which has its own data on it, right? And the meta sound lives in a completely different place than the gameplay data. And so the state tree is not only managing the state, but it's managing the state and transmitting data to the meta sound through its task system. So So here, if you see the Metasound player play task has two data points. It has a reference to the actor, the context actor, which is the Metasound, which I called my Metasound player, and then it has a reference to the Metasound source asset, which is basically a template for the instance that gets played. And so, and the actor is through the context actor, and then this is actually selecting from our global or not global, but our sort of static parameter list is this asset reference. Now, if we go to the state tree, you can see here I have loaded this combat state tree, the state tree that I'm referencing in this view here. You see, I've loaded it here, and we can override any of that static parameter
Nice.
data, right? And so if I wanted to swap out the Metasound reference, I could do that for this instance. And so, or I could do other things. Like in this case, if we look at what I have here on my parameter list, I have the reference to my Metasound source asset. I also have the names of various data inputs, right? So we have there's a trigger input for starting the combat. There's a trigger input for ending the combat, and there's a integer input for swapping between different states, right? And I use 0, 1, and 2 for the different states. And you can see here I have the names of the triggers, and then I have the actual state integer values. So the low state is 0, mid state is 1, high state is 2. And so this becomes actually a parameter map that is used by the task system and the evaluation system. So let's take a look at this. First, let's take a look at the player or the parent task. So I basically have a parent task type, and then I have implementations, child classes of that parent task. So the parent task is quite simple. All it does is it has a reference to the player, the context actor class type, and reference to the Metasound task type. Now the player reference is important because I need to interact with the Metasound instance. And so I need to, in order to interact with the Metasound instance, I need access to the audio component on the player object, the player actor. So, so this is, if we look at the class defaults, the class settings, this is an abstract class. In other words, this isn't an implementation. It is meant to be used as a parent object for extending this interface. So let's look at the child object here. You can see the parent class listed up here. And for anyone who isn't, what I'm talking about is what's called object-oriented programming, or OO programming. And Blueprints is a fully capable object-oriented programming language. And in order to invoke that, the derived classes, the child classes, in Blueprints, you can just right-click on a Blueprint parent class and then just create a child Blueprint class right from there. So it's very easy to create a child class from a Blueprint. And we can see here is a child class that I just called the Metasound player play task, and it's very simple. On event enter state, I get the player reference. So every time that this is a sort of maybe not obvious, and this is something that is like an extra click that some people don't do, but it's kind of sloppy if you don't do it. generally speaking, it's a good practice. Anytime you're going to reference an object, and you can notice an object is this sort of light blue coloring. Anytime you're going to reference an object in your code or script or blueprint, whatever, you generally want to validate that object. You want to make sure that that object is valid, because any function or attempt to access that object, if it's not valid, will crash. And so Blueprint will try to do all it can to sort of spit out errors for you, but yeah, that will just it's like reaching into the void. It breaks reality. So computers don't like it. So make sure you validate your object references. The only time I would say it's excessive is if you can ensure that the reference is valid, because it takes very little effort to just validate your reference. Just do it. And this also gives you an opportunity. If you do have an invalid reference for some reason and your code is breaking or your blueprint script is breaking, you can print debug off of these is not invalid branches to just print out when it's breaking. And this is actually not an uncommon method for debugging your code or blueprint scripts.
Did you
Anyway,
show how to make
yeah.
it a validated get?
Oh, that's a good one. So let's make my here we'll just make one right real quick here. We'll call it my object, and we'll just make it an object. We'll just make it the object. We'll just do object. So when I talked about parent-child relationships in blueprints, object is the top parent object. It is the class of object all other class of objects in blueprints are derived from.
It's
All
the great
blueprints.
granddaddy.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just So in other words, as a quote unquote base class or a parent class, it can hold a reference safely to a child class, and so it can be treated as children can be treated like their parents. And that's where casting comes in. I'm not going to teach you object-oriented programming, but if you're unfamiliar with this sort of terminology, this is a great thing for you to get into. You should definitely investigate and be curious about object-oriented programming. And Blueprints has all of the sort of canonical object-oriented programming elements. And so I forget when they added this. Because in the old days, when I was your age, you had to do like an is valid check. So there's like a pure function that does an is valid check, and then there's a macro that does an is valid check. But what's cool is that now you can just right click and say convert to a validated get. And so now it just has the validation check built in to the reference itself, which is really fantastic.
Yay.
Now, one thing that I could have done differently here is get player. And the meta sound. Get meta sound. So what I could have done alternatively, this would be sort of the older method, is valid, is use the pure function is valid, and then the end Boolean evaluation or operator, I should say, that then is only true when both of these are true. So this would also work and then lead to a branch. It's a little bit visually cleaner than this weird thing going on here. I mean, but then I'd still have to evaluate the audio component. So the audio component, which lives on the player, could also potentially be invalid for some reason. And so this requires a valid reference before I can even look at it. But the meta sound and player are basically independent of each other, and so yeah. Anyway, moving.
Can I sidetrack you 1 second
Yeah.
as well? If
Yeah.
you make a Boolean in 5.6, so just make a random Boolean variable.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were directing me.
This is a tutorial. So just put a
Tutorial.
getter onto your. What does that say?
B tutorial bool. Sorry.
Oh.
This, by the way, is an epic naming scheme thing that you won't necessarily find everywhere else. It's a little bit weird and old-fashioned, but in the olden days, in certain types of naming conventions, the parameter type, the variable type, starts the name as a lowercase. So B for bool, and then you would see like I for integer, whatever. But for whatever reason, Epic does not adopt that in anywhere else except in bools. I don't know why, but you'll notice that if I drag a get off of this, you won't see the B.
Sidetracking my sidetrack here.
Yeah.
So if you right click on that now, like you're going to validate that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh, convert to branch. Wow,
That's
that
new.
is fancy. Yeah, that's pretty fancy.
I'm honestly a little bit torn by it because I think I'm so used to seeing a get bool into a branch, and when I see this, it's less nodes, and I like that for that reason. But it's
Yeah.
also I don't want to confuse other people that are looking at my blueprints, and they might not know what this is.
Right.
So I'm a little hesitant to use it, but it is cool that it's been added. I would
That's
love
really
to see
cool.
one for enums too. It'd be cool, but one can
Well,
dream.
we have the select node, but yeah, I see what you're saying. You know sorry,
The
not select, the
switch.
switch node. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Apologies.
Instead of like convert to branch or validate to get, it'd be cool to have convert to switch and then
Yeah, convert to switch.
have a foot long list
You
of
can have-
enum values.
You can have a literal definition, so it's yeah. But I see what you're saying. Yeah. Cool. Right. That's nice. A side chain there. That's like a stack. We had to be like pushing new side tracks, and then we got to pop them back off to like work our way back to the original topic.
Yes.
There's some computer science humor.
Is that stack or
Quote,
heap?
unquote.
I forget.
Oh my god, get out of here.
We're not going on
I
that
was
one?
thinking
Okay.
of a data structure, not the memory pool.
Fair enough.
Oh goodness, we're dropping viewers.
It's fine. Just
It's fine. This is for posterity.
they'll be back for the t-shirts or
Anyway, this is the play. So when I enter state, I just check that everything's valid, and then I set the sound onto my audio component. So this task is actually setting the sound for the audio component, and which means that the sound can be basically parameterized and dynamic in certain ways. And then I set the sound, I play it, and then I finish the task. I sort of mark the task as succeeded. And then when I go back to my state tree, you'll see at the bottom, I have my transition definition say on state succeeded, go to ambient. So on state succeeded, I transition to an ambient with 0 conditions. And then the ambient state has a task delays forever. And then on event, and the event has to be this tagged event, which is music event combat start. It will transition to intro. And then on the intro, I have a metasound, my metasound player state tree task child version of submitting a trigger. So very similarly, on enter state, it will reference the player, get the audio component off the player, and then submit a trigger by the name, as long as the name doesn't equal none. Sorry, I entered none here. That's like a sort of, maybe possibly unnecessary validation check, but it was just like the input default is none, and I just didn't want it to be the default. So don't, name your trigger parameters none. Anyway, this just submits. I could probably do like a task succeeded, task finished, finished task. But I don't end up using it in this case because if we return, we see that I submit this trigger to start, and then I have a delay that I impose. 25 seconds. That's approximately how much the intro, how long the intro is. If I wanted to get super exact, I could do that. But I just sort of roughed it in. It wasn't that important to me. But yeah, it's just a 25-second delay. And then on completion, the state moves to a low combat state. And then the low combat, medium combat, and high combat states are very similar. And I have delay forevers on all of them. And I do use, this probably is, this could be optimized, but right now I'm using the tick evaluation for the trigger transitions. Each one has 3 transitions, but before I get there, starting with the Metasound player subtype, the child type is an integer submission. So I have the parameter name that I want to submit, which I using this naming, I reference the parameter list here, the static parameter list. So I can basically say I want the name to be the state name indicated here on my parameter list. And the parameter integer is the low state integer. And then, yeah, otherwise it just, here it is. It's very similar. It just checks the name and then sends in an integer, the integer value that is referenced here. And then I could probably add the finish task at the end, which is just, it's fine. It just, all this means is that it got through all of these branches. So then I do a delay forever. And this is something that you can think about from the perspective of a design philosophy. In this case, my approach was to have no barriers to state entry, and instead have very discrete transition specifiers. So, in other words, the evaluation is something that happens during the state, versus another approach to building this would be to have a task that triggers the thing, but then returns to some sort of high level spot where it attempts to enter states, and the entry condition is how you get to the next thing. So that's sort of like, in other words, is your evaluation on the end of the state moment, whatever, or is it or is it the beginning? And so that's how you might. So in this case, I sort of favored doing my evaluations during the state, while at the end of the things, and not use. I didn't really use enter conditions in any of these situations, but that's something to think about. And I think it will influence broadly the way you set up your tree. Cool. Where was I? Right. So, the combat variants all have very similar approaches. It's just, if So right. So remember what I said? The context actor contains the dynamic data for the evaluation and usage inside the state tree. And so in this case, I'm using a gameplay tag container. And so if we go to my actor class here, I just have keyboard inputs that are sort of proxying for events that could be coming from gameplay. But I have one key for starting combat. I have another key for um, setting the gameplay tag container, adding a tag to the container and removing other tags from the container, and so on and so forth. And so that's kind of how I handled that. Uh, but it's a full-on gameplay tag query, right, that I use here. And so what's powerful about gameplay tag queries is that you can have a container with very complex contents, and then you can have a gameplay tag query that is very sophisticated in its evaluation. In this case, it's very simple, but I liked using the form, um, and because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And so yeah, so basically what is happening is every frame, this is where it's unoptimized, my approach here, is that every frame I just sort of reevaluate the conditions. Now, as an alternative, what I could do is I could have an event that is called to check, to do an evaluation. Like it could just be as simple as just like reevaluate the gameplay tag container. That could be as simple as that. But it was late. This is how I ended up doing it. But that's just sort of an alternative, and that in that case you would use an on event trigger for these transitions. So those are that's for switching. And then the last is I do have an on event trigger for ending the combat. And so when I click 5 here, it will send an event, music event combat end. And then the meta sound will trigger its ending cue. And the meta sound is self-managed, so it will submit its own on finished trigger back to the audio engine system. And then the last thing I do here is I have a on audio play state changed. I was planning to do a bunch of stuff here. I had some initial ideas when I set this up for maybe doing stuff so the state tree could know when it's playing and when it's not playing and sort of stuff. But I just do a check on when the audio component stops, and then I submit a stop logic call to the state tree to just say, hey, stop doing stuff. So basically, ending the queue finishes out the state tree. When we get to the stop, I have a delay forever, and it just calls the trigger, the same trigger function, except the parameter that I reference for the name is the stop trigger name, which is end battle. And then everything else is the same. And then I did have an on succeeded go to ambient, but I ended up not doing that. So yeah, so that's how it's set up, and what I can do, which is kind of interesting. Let me see if I can get so if we go here and we open up the debugger. Let me see if I can do like one of these deals. Like this. Put this in here. Switch back to, there we go. You see the debugger. So hopefully we could see this running. Let's give it a shot. And if hopefully I didn't any of my changes didn't mess it up. We'll see. It's kind of the fun of it, right? You're like, hey, Dan messed up. Even Dan messed up on his stream, his own stream. Can you believe that? Okay, I guess I was trying to see if I could do. Ah, there we go. I wanted it big. Here we go. So this debugger is this is just the visual logger, right? Yeah, it's just an implementation of the visual logger, I think here. Very cool. Let's put this over here. Whoops, not there. There we go. We'll put that over there. So we got some space here. We've got enough, like, that's looking good. Okay. So I'll hit Alt P, plays. And we can actually hear, we've already, because we auto-activated, we're already playing, and we're in the ambient section. You can actually see that here was lit right there. And we can also see down here that we have run through play, and now we're at ambient. Okay. So now I'm in there. I hit 1 for combat. Something up. So we did, let's take a look at our debugger here. It's probably something that I did. Some change that I made as I was plucking through stuff. So, okay, let's take a look at our debugger. We send event, music event combat start, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that looks, so this is the debugger here is shows the timeline for things, so you can actually scrub through it. But it feels like I just zipped through. It was like, doop, and then I was right there on the intro. So here we were sitting around on the ambient loop. All this looks good, and we're just sitting on that delay task, and then boop. Okay, so we send the event, music event combat start. That's expected. We trigger transition with events, music event combat start. Yep. Go to state intro. Try enter intro. Okay. Delay. Enter states. Intro route. Yeah, so trigger transitions, trigger. Try enter low combat. Oh! Okay, interesting. I see what happened. So that was a mistake of mine, was the adding those finished tasks. I think, let's see, because here's where things start to go wrong. Is we get the state complete. Now, the... oops, there we go. Sorry, there we go. We got an intro. Intro, on state complete. Yeah, we go to low combat, and then we're in low combat. And on tick, this condition, if actor gameplay tag container is mid, or if it's high, that all looks good. But let me just delay forever on event. Okay. So here are the X's. It says, okay, so low combat, on tick, go to state. Oh, this is where it starts doing the tick. On tick, go to state mid combat. Right. It doesn't match. Trigger transitions play, on state succeeded. Go to state ambient. Ah! Okay. So I think what we need to do is get rid of these finished tasks. So this was my mistake. I had it right the first time. I'm just gonna get rid of these finished tasks. because I don't want to indicate completion. I want to kind of just let it sit there uncomfortably. So, okay, so this is going to be cool about the debugger, or the visual logger here, is we will have a second execution. So when I go Alt-P again, we'll see another line. And what's cool is we'll be able to compare it. So if you do like, if you've got sort of some sort of automation or replay, you can kind of see things going. Okay, so we're here at the ambient level. So let me just jump out real quick and then make some space here so we can see the whole thing. Okay. Back in. We hit 1 to start combat. Yeah, and now you can see it's correctly highlighting the state where we're at. And the state we're going. We're at low combat. There was some sort of bug there in terms of the music going into, like, it sounded like it was defaulting into a higher level state. But yeah, so here's we're in medium combat. We have medium combat getting logged. High combat. Go back to low combat. It's an inelegant transition. I think I mentioned last time that I would probably do some sort of transition section to sort of give the like percussion ramping down, that sort of thing, percussion ramping up kind of thing. That's something that I would smooth out this transition. But we're basically there. And then if I hit 5, it should go to the end. Then we go. Ending. It's a very sudden ending. And then it'll actually stop the, you'll see this stuff end when it's on finished end. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah. All right, so yeah, there's using state tree. Now, so okay, so here's what I was kind of talking about before, was this idea that, like, I'm imagining this scenario where we have a custom schema, wherein it's like meta sound oriented, and we are actually grabbing input and output data directly from the Metasound interface, and populating default parameters here, and hooking it into like it'll be cool to hook it into like the output subsystem, where you could be like receiving data from the Metasound back into state tree, sending data back into the Metasound. Like, I think that would be really cool. So I feel like there's an opportunity here to really create a very tight cycle for managing the Metasound using state tree, and a bunch of tasks and evaluators and utilities that just sort of have these features working out of the box. So that's what I was sort of talking about. I don't know, how do you think about that? What do you think about that, Eric?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm like troubleshooting my gameplay ability system right now. I'm not used to setting this part up myself, so I'm gonna work around. That's what we do, right?
All too often.
Everybody work around.
All too often. All right. Well, I have been ignoring comments here. Steve in the chat. I'm here for Dan's opinions. Thank you.
Can you give us an opinion?
Let me opine. Florida in June. Very hot.
You haven't talked
very
about Unreal
humid.
Fest.
Yeah, so last week was Unreal Fest, and
Things
um,
happened.
uh, well, so I think Orlando is. I've only ever been to Orlando in the sort of late spring time, so it was consistently Orlando.
Sure.
I don't know if Orlando has like an optimal season for visiting.
No.
But
Not that I know of.
it was consistent with my previous experiences, which is, you get off the plane and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. It's not that I ever forgot that it's hot and humid there, but it's that I'm constantly reminded every time I walk
Sure,
outside.
yeah.
We were it was nice. It was, generally speaking, I think the event went really well. I think it was a lot of it was great. It's always great to see people that you only get to see online,
Yeah, for
interact
sure.
with people online. And some of those folks had traveled lots, pretty long distances to be there. We had some amazing demos. We had
Did you bring our sound generator?
I did, yeah. It
Yes.
it it and it worked. Well, we did never get the locking working.
The locking, it was
Yeah,
still
the
randomizing
locking.
them?
Yeah, it was still. Well, I think it was random. It was unclear, but I think it was randomizing the UX still. It was like
Oh,
it
interesting.
wasn't
Oops.
maybe passing it, but yeah. Anyway, it was fun to make. Like, it was I think people understood the gist of it. We went a little crazy with it, but I think people understood the idea of. I think it demonstrated a couple things. One is the idea that you could have a sort of intermediary interface for something that is generally understood to be complicated. Like a lot of that's like a pretty common piece of feedback for folks who are sort of new to meta sounds, is like, this seems complicated.
Yeah.
It it's it's no it's not. I don't know. It's a relative sort of opinion. Complexity is it's usually
Just,
based on your
it's as
experience.
complex as you want to make it.
Yeah, it can be very simple. Um, the But yeah, having an intermediary interface, and I sort of tried to paint the picture to folks who are interested. This idea that, like, if you have a large team, the you can create a kind of um, interface for folks to constrain their interactions and their design, like thresholds, we'll call them,
Hmm.
in really meaningful ways that maintain the vision. So in other words, like, because sometimes you have new, like, juniors who maybe you want to put some bumpers around the work that they submit,
Sure.
or you have contractors where you're like, I want to constrain the designs or work that they're submitting, and it's short term, and so you don't want to necessarily um, there's like there I get let me put it this way. There's an opportunity in designing an interface such that it's natural and, like, it's basic, most straightforward output is in line with your design aesthetic, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think that there's opportunities there that have yet to be fully explored. Um, and I think it has a huge amount of utility for teams who are either large or bringing in temp employees or temp designers on the regular. And so I think that picture was well painted. I feel like it was. And I think also there was a kind of a little bit, there's a little bit of a, oh, that's cool, response to the idea that all of the different sounds actually came out of one meta sound. Like, the meta sound
Yeah.
itself has a lot of flexibility if you are a designer with a good strong background in like instrument architecture, like instrument design.
Yeah.
So I think that was also pretty useful. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Steven. It's famous now. That's right. You heard it here first. uh yeah, so that went well. We had some cool demos from Tapes Club,
Nice.
aka Patrick Hart. Pretty awesome demos actually that he brought. In fact, I kind of challenged him because he started up showing this thing that he showed last Unreal Fest, which is kind of like this weird beat mangled thing, and it uses some sort of motion design particle effect to like do some crazy stuff that's synchronous to the beat.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool. What do you got for us this year? And he delivered.
What was it?
He called it hyper reactivity. And
Okay.
it just he started it up, and it just says type start typing or something like that. And it just like you start typing, and then every key press is like it's like all this crazy stuff. And so there were a lot of sort of, we'll call it it was a little bit of an open mic beat making moment for folks. That was pretty exciting, and it brought a lot of attention to the booth. So that was kind of fun.
That's fun.
Yeah, but we had Swedish Tech there, and demo from Cycling 74. The Max folks, the Max MSP folks.
Okay.
They had a RNBO demo, which was cool, and yeah, it was overall pretty positive. We had a pretty fun surprise community member show up during a panel, and that was Joel Zimmerman, or Deadmau5.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes people call him.
Very cool.
And so, and that was a kind of fun cap to, I think it was the second day, to just have like Aaron and Max and Joel chatting on stage about like intra-frame timing, like
I did see some of that.
Sub-frame
Yeah.
timing. It's one of those like underappreciated, really difficult problems to solve, which is just like really precise timing for both audio events, but also feedback into gameplay and stuff like that. So yeah, that was cool. To me, that's one of those things, like that's actually one of the reasons I really enjoy working in Metasounds, is that there is the triggers, I suspect, there's an immediacy that you get when you're sort of working in that space, and I think that keeps the like flow going. You know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
you're in a sort of design flow, when you're in a flow state, you don't want interruptions. Disruptions to that really keep you from maintaining that. And I think that's one of the things that I found really nice about Metasounds is being able to keep that. And I think that has to do somewhat with how immediate the feedback is when you're like, I try this out, and it's like suddenly you know exactly what it does. So yeah. Yeah, overall it was very good. It was a good trip. It was a good trip. But yeah, it's been an interesting couple weeks actually since since we last chatted. So
Indeed.
yeah, so I've been sort of moved around in the org, and my sort of priorities have shifted. So that should be interesting. I don't know what that's gonna exactly mean for me. Unreal Fest always sort of, any conference really sort of injects some amount of sort of chaos into
Yeah.
into everything. But
It's a little early this year too. It seems like normally it's October Unreal Fest.
yeah, well, if you look at what they've started doing is they've started doing multiple Unreal Fests all
Yeah.
around the world, and so I think for whatever reason, like Orlando one, or the domestic one, or whatever, the United States one was in June this year. I'm fine with it because last year it was right next to Game SoundCon, which I really like going to, and
Yeah.
so it was that became like a really tough month to do both conferences in the same month.
100%. At least it was in Seattle last year.
Yeah, that was nice. That was nice. That was convenient. The only bummer about this year is oh yeah, hey, thanks, Steven. It was a fun chat. I'm glad if you got to see it. I think it's still up there. I don't know what they do with those. I don't know if they're gonna sit there for all time, or if they're gonna do like an edit or something like that.
They normally keep them up until they have the edits. Well, they'll keep the full length streams up, and then they just add
the edits later,
individual ones later.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have
But
to skip
that might be
the
different.
end of that day. It's like day 2, I think, is that chat. Yeah, Steven, thanks. It's gonna be, I don't know, it's not necessarily a new title or anything. It's just sort of like a shift in the way that they want to utilize me, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. The tough thing that's happening now, which I think is another reason for our reduced view rate this evening, is that AirCon is happening this week, and I got to sort of sneak into one of the. They need to give them an interesting name, the presentations, cause like call them like Wiggles or something, or AirCon Wiggles. I feel like there's some missed opportunity for a funny name. But yeah, I saw Horacio's chat about C++, Unreal C++ for blueprinters. I liked it. It was good. I agree with it. I didn't get to see the whole thing because I had to jump into a meeting. That's like the hardest part about AirCon, is like it's during the workday. But yeah, I got to see the beginning of his talk, and I think if you're all interested in learning more about C++ and Unreal, that's a good talk to go grab, because I agree with his method. I think that starting out with a function library is like a really easy, low stakes way of kind of like entering that space. And you have to use all the Unreal macros and stuff that sort of are weird, the weird part of like the C++ experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the only one I've been able to see so far. What I like about the Air Wiggles community is super positive. There's a lot of I feel like everyone's very friendly, and things are generally constructive in terms of feedback. Very positive. So yeah, I'm glad to see it succeed. But it's sort of I wanted to be more participant, but Unreal Fest being right on top of it was just prohibitive for me. And actually the week before Unreal Fest, there was a Sound Summit PR in Puerto Rico. And so that what I was actually considering going to as well before I knew about Unreal Fest in Orlando. Um, that would have been way too much late May, early June
Yeah.
sunlight. I got sunburn on like the first day, just like walking outside. So I have very susceptible skin. Well, Eric,
What's up?
why don't you want to share? You want to
You
share?
can look at what I'm struggling to do right now.
Yeah. Well, why don't we work on this together? Maybe we can.
Sure, yeah.
Compare.
So I guess just to kind of recap what I was doing or what I
Yeah.
am doing, if I can find my assets. So just to remind everyone, I was trying to set up a control bus mix that activates when you get hit by this grenade. And I was trying to do it with state tree, and I ruled that out because it's not really a stateful thing. It's just kind of a one-time event. And so I did try doing a GCN, a gameplay queue notify using the gameplay ability system. And it's a little tricky to do that because I have to, if I use the looping version of that, I have to apply the queue and then I have to remove the queue. And for some reason, I couldn't get the queue to remove, so I would activate this control bus mix and then I would just get stuck. So that wasn't great, and so I figured I would just move back to kind of a more, I don't know how to put it, but I made a component version of it where this component will get added to an actor that's hit by the grenade, and when it gets added to the character, it just binds to when the character dies, so we can deactivate it if the player dies, or if the actor for some reason just disappears, we'll kill the control bus mix there as well. Then this is the same setup that I had before, where I have a data asset, and this would help if I set that. In here, I have different mix stages that I can control the volume of when I get hit by this grenade. And so if, for instance, I want to turn the music all the way down to 0 if you're close, and then have a kind of an attenuation range here that I have the values for down here, and that's kind of low, and that also seems kind of sus. So let's do like, we'll just make it, maybe that's a little too big, but something like that. So I've got music coming down. There's also like the attack and release of the control bus mix. So when the mix activates, it'll take this long to go from 1 down to 0. And then when it releases, it'll take somewhere between 2 and 5 seconds to go back from 0 to 1. And then I just set that up for weapons and Foley as well. And I assume those are already set up with all the sounds. I didn't actually double check that everything's routed there. And so on the blueprint for the grenade, which was already made here, I'm just adding some stuff onto the end of it. This whole section here is when the grenade detonates. And so this gets called on the server because the server is authoritative for which players are hit by the grenade explosion. And at the end of this, this is where the damage gameplay effect is applied to the player. And so I figure, all right, at the end here, when we take damage, I can also apply my shell-shocked control bus mix.
All right.
And then I'm passing the distance in there to get that distance attenuation effect. And so what I'm doing is I have calling another function here, or another event that's should be replicating out to all the clients, and then I'm checking, making sure it is a client, and then I'm checking if it is, if you're the one that got hit, basically. And if you're the one that got hit, we'll add this component to your player, and then everything happens in here, which I guess I didn't finish going over. In the control bus mix data, I'm making the mix stages using all those different attenuation values for the mix value, attack, and release. It's kind of a mess, but it works. Get all the stages, and then I create a dynamic control bus mix at runtime. And then I just create a timer using the duration that's also specified in the data asset. And then I call deactivate the control bus mix, and that'll do it. I should actually destroy the component as well, because we don't need that to linger around once it's done. And so the issue that I'm having is I'm getting my function called on the server, but it's not being replicated down to clients. And so I'm not quite sure on the networking setup for Lyra, and that's, I see that it is replicating. I was looking, the grenade obviously replicates.
What about the event itself? What is that? What are the properties of the event itself?
So here I've got multicast.
Okay.
And I'm not doing reliable. I don't think that's necessary. Could try it. What reliable does is it will call the event until the client responds back that it received it. So it creates a lot of network traffic.
Yeah, I feel like that wouldn't be the reason.
No, I don't think so.
Since you're local, since everything is local.
Yeah, there's no. And I know you can't hear anything because I don't have my audio set up, but I'm going to throw a grenade. And I did get my print, so that's good. That means we.
Wait, does that mean we reached the end of the thing? Oh.
Yeah, it means we made it to here. So I'm gonna.
So it was reliable. Oh my.
Well, no, hang on. Let me just.
Or maybe it was
that.
something else that you.
I did change some stuff before, like I started the walkthrough. I'm gonna turn that off because.
Yeah, let's just see.
Yeah, we should hit a breakpoint this time.
You could also set up sound modulate. What was it the debug for modulator? So you can see if the mix is actually called.
Modulation. This one.
They changed the name of it, so
yeah.
It's like sound. Let me see.
Matrix buses.
Your thing is way too small for it.
Yeah, there's modulation filter mixes, buses, matrix.
It's
just try them all.
It's au.debug.modulation. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just see it.
And then set that to 1. And that should give you the...
Nope, I missed.
Yeah, it's up there. I'm seeing it on your thing. Oh, you missed the character. Sorry.
Yeah, I was throwing a point blank grenade and I missed. So now I'm not even getting the... We're not getting the breakpoints, and it's not printing.
You took off the reliable.
Is it really that, though? Like, that seems kind of sus. We'll try it. That was the only thing I changed this time. And I wonder maybe, too, if I just forgot to, like... It could be coming from a state tree or something that I forgot to remove.
Right.
We'll see. Yep, I am throwing grenades. Okay, well...
It was the reliable.
This is my component. Yeah, so reliable, huh? That seems sus, though. You shouldn't have to turn that on. And let's just look at my control bus mix here. So I've got my 3 stages all got created: music, weapons, and Foley. And I'm just gonna let it go.
And check the debug, the modulation debug.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, and then grip my client window.
There it is.
Shell shocked.
Yeah.
And then there it fades back out.
Nice.
And if I wish I could make it bigger, but if I throw it off to the side, the effect will be less.
And are the numbers less? Is it? It's hard to see on our.
It's hard for me to see too. 'Cause my viewing angle isn't very good. So it looks like some of my values are pretty quick. I saw the music attack time was pretty fast. So it is working, but I think you're not hearing it, but I still hear the music as loud as it is, so it's not actually affecting the music. And so maybe we can dig into
There's
the
just one. There's just one music meta sound in the whole project. There's just one.
what would that be called
It's
here?
MX
This one.
system.
Okay.
It's MX
Why
system.
why are all of these closed? Bizarre. Okay.
The sound class should be applying the control bus
Here.
modulation. Yeah.
Parameter patch.
Yeah, that was before we had unison.
Okay. Well, it should be working, I guess, but I don't know. Anyway, give this a try if you want this effect. You could even, layer in like a tinnitus meta sound or something,
Yeah.
to kind of make it your ears ringing and stuff. But um, it's pretty simple. Not much to it. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Cool. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing. The, this is one of the things that I will get asked a lot of times about, you know, technical audio design demos. Like how do I demonstrate technical audio design, technical sound design, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that grenade effect was on my to-do list for Lyra. I had it. It was on the end of it. It was just on the it was just like the last item on my to-do list,
Hmm.
and I just didn't get through everything I wanted to do on that project, which is almost always the case with a special project. Whenever I worked on special projects, I'd have
Hmm.
these big ideas, and then I'd be like, oh, we only have a month, And so
Yeah.
you just get through whatever you can get through, and doing a sort of classic grenade tinnitus effect was something that I wanted to demonstrate, and I never got around to it. And so it's one of the things that I do recommend. People are like, I want to show this, I want to show how to do this, and that I have the skill. What is? And I'm like, that's a great, because it's a intersection of a lot of different things. It's an
Yeah.
intersection of mixing. It's an intersection of sound design. It's an intersection of game design. You introduce new elements. Like lots of times you'll have sort of like internal sounds come out, like heartbeat
Yep.
effects and sort
Yep.
of filtering and volume
Low pass
dumping and
filters
yeah,
and
all that stuff. And then you have like resonance sounds. Like sometimes there is, I think, a little bit maybe underappreciated the tinnitus effect being well sound designed. And I've heard versions where it's like just a sine tone or like a couple sine tones,
yeah.
and it feels like it's insufficient or it's not representative of the like sonic material that should have carried resonance through to the uh, Scylla, the in your ear.
Oh, the yep.
Yeah, you
Whatever
know what I'm
they.
talking about.
Yeah.
The hairs in your ear shell,
The ear hairs.
the ear hairs. Uh, yeah. So I feel like there's that it's one of those things that's like it can sound too like super cheesy. Um, but I like it as a demo because it intersects so much stuff, and I think there's opportunities to make it sound good.
Yeah.
And I think
It's
if you can
fun
do
too,
that, yeah.
especially when you have like a data-driven setup like this where you can tweak it and
Mhm.
uh, it's pretty quick to iterate on and you could use it for different things too. Like I could just make a new data asset and target different control buses
Yeah.
or different effects and stuff, and uh, pretty versatile in that regard.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I feel like um, that would be pretty appropriate to expand the like gameplay queue
Yeah, for sure.
and have, especially now in 5.6, we have the like limited duration
Hmm.
mixes now, and so I feel like it's totally appropriate for gameplay queues to have, like, you could see adding a like modulation section on the gameplay
Yeah.
queue
Then I wouldn't have to do like
list.
the do all the work to add a component and stuff. You
Yeah,
could just do it
exactly.
from the yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't remember if we did anything like that on this project, but I do feel like I did something on Valley of the Ancient. I was definitely digging into the gameplay cues because that was like one of the first. It's like the first time I used the
yeah.
gameplay, the gas system at all. And it was they were swapping out the light, the light dart with
Oh, okay.
the bubble or whatever the like robot whatever the drone camera. That's what they called it.
Okay.
I did something. I feel like I did something with mixes, but it was implemented in the blueprint script, and that's something I feel like it's actually maybe it's like a little bit of a pitfall too with the gas system because I feel like one of the things that you run into is constantly making child objects of like gameplay cues, like just it's like all gameplay cue subtypes to like add features and you customize for your project. And to some degree that makes a lot of sense, but I think also it carries a ton of baggage because every time I go into a gameplay queue, anytime I go into a gameplay queue, there's just more there than I think anyone needs. Like there's just a massive list of like parameters and things that you can trigger and set off that are
Yeah.
largely unused. Yeah. Yeah. So, we don't have any. We haven't talked about if there's anything we want to do for next week.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I don't
We've
know.
also
Do we have people watching? Does anyone have?
we've got Steve
Okay. Well.
and Steve. Sorry, Stephen, unnecessarily shortening your name. Yeah, the random checkbox thing.
I'm used to it. It's just kind of it comes with the territory. It's always a relief to find the, it's like a mystery hunt or
Yeah,
yeah,
those can be frustrating, and especially if you feel like the solution it doesn't have a clear or understandable explanation.
yeah, reliable when I'm hosting a local server.
Yeah, that
Oh,
seems a little
actually,
bit off.
yeah, I wonder what my networking like pi settings are. Actually, I didn't look at that, but
Are you like simulating high traffic or something like that?
well, I have play as client selected, and I might want maybe place. Yeah, I guess Lyra is probably just play. Yeah, it should be fine, but I don't know.
One thing that is a good idea whenever you're working in a system where you're having to deal with replication is to also test where you have a server client like combo. I
Yeah,
forget what it's called. But there's like basically two options where the client is also a server or a server is independent of all clients. And you can get in some weird situations where like things get double instanced.
so a
Yeah.
listen server.
A listed server. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's always something to be watchful for. I largely avoided it on Project Lyra, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
We used the gameplay queue system that was already well managed by everything else
Yeah.
utilizing it, and otherwise, I just treated everything as a client only effect.
Yeah. I do this. Always try and do as much on the client and like
Yeah.
interact with the server as little as possible.
Yeah. The biggest problem that we run into is like optimizations for animation keyframes.
Mm, yeah.
Because sometimes because when a character is animating outside of the view frustum, there's a temptation to optimize the animation because you don't actually have to have visualization.
Right.
And so what do you do in terms of all the frames? And for audio, it's a huge issue because we don't want our footsteps or, Foley sounds to be optimized out.
We still got to hear it.
We still got to hear it. And so sometimes what happens is they'll like optimize the playback of the events the notifies, and that can be problematic as well, um, because sometimes they'll do like a reduced frame rate, and you'll hear like weird jitter in terms of the
Mm,
rhythm, or like the footstep rhythm or something like that.
yeah.
In this case, I remember one of the challenges that I ran into was that um, I I oh uh, I don't know if it's still the case, but when I worked on Lyra, the only part of the animation that is evaluated on the server is the montage. So animation montages are evaluated on the server. And so only events in those places are the ones you can expect to replicate.
Mhm.
And so we had an issue around that because all of the locomotion is not, they're not in the montage.
Yeah.
And so we had, everything was outside of the montage that was all of our notifies. So that became like a little bit of an issue. But
Yeah. What do
but
you want to do?
yeah,
Like,
so so that's a great question. Hope I'm not fatiguing people with just Unreal stuff. And this nothing that says we have to do Unreal. I've also talked to people who might be interested in hanging out with us and joining the chat. But I've downloaded all the templates, the new templates. If you haven't seen, Unreal 5.6 comes with brand new gameplay templates with a bunch of subvariants, which is really interesting. And they have a wide range. Like, for example, it's actually very clever the way that they organized it. So there's a new thing when you go into install or when you start a new project and you're using a template as the starting point. There's now an option called variant, which is super easy to just ignore because and it defaults at like no variant. So like for example, there's a first person template. It's not called first person shooter. It's called first person template. And then there's a variant that is a shooter variant. And then it will install extra content to the template that extends the first person
nice.
stuff and includes shooter, like arena shooter space. And then there's an alternate variant that is a survival horror variant. And that extends the first person character stuff. And it has like a level that like showcases like mood lighting, like and like a stamina system, So
Okay.
it's some interesting stuff. So I feel like there could be some fun to be had in like audio treatment because I think there is some very minimal audio that is utilized.
Yeah.
It's not used across the board. And so I think it's a good opportunity to like try stuff out, explore stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's so yeah. But those could be pretty involved. Like it's so like it could be as simple as like I think the survival like the one of my initial sort of thoughts was like the survival horror one could use like a breathing system. That could be an interesting one to like build because you got like stamina, and so it's like a classic one, but maybe also reverb and footsteps like could help.
I think you're 4 months too early for that. That's got to be in October.
It's an October thing.
Yep.
I will say that there's other things we could. Yeah, I don't know. So the other things. So if we just sort of taking my flights of fancy, I am also looking into this is something I brought up before. I'm also looking at tone.js, which is a JavaScript library for extending the web audio API. And if you haven't looked at the Web Audio API, it's basically a node-based audio system that just works on your browser nearby. Like it just works in the browser. One of the things that I was looking at, it was something that I've always wanted to do, but I don't know how long it would take me or if it's possible, is to implement interactive music on my website as a demo. I've always wanted to do that.
Same, yeah. I remember, gosh, what was it? I know Unreal used to have like HTML5 support or
Yeah.
something, but
Well, yeah.
also Fmod
Does
has
it?
web support. I believe it did. I was working on a project as a contractor for. This was a few years ago now, but there was an author writing a novel and wanted like a website with interactive music while you were
Yeah.
reading this novel, and so we actually did get it up and running, Fmod in browser, um, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, the project kind of fizzled
How,
out, but yeah.
so, yeah, I'm really curious about. I'm interested in that. So, what the Fmod, was there another host? Like, here, I'll give you an example,
Mhm.
right? So, for early days, when I was your age, in 2009, maybe, I was a beta tester
Mhm.
for Audio Kinetics implementation of Wise in Unity.
Okay.
And I was paying like $75 a month for a Unity license, if you can imagine that. Just so I could have the like pro version. I was like I was teaching at the time.
Mhm.
And so, or I was learning at the time. I don't remember where I was. I was either in school or I was teaching. Um, and yeah, because it's $75 a month. I think that's what it was. Yeah. Anyway, maybe it wasn't 2009. Maybe it was 2011. Anyway, the memory time. The reason what in order to the reason for the subscription is Unity at the time had a, I don't know if it's still the case, had a constraint where you couldn't incorporate external third party plugins
Mm.
into your project unless you were paying for like full
Okay.
pro version or whatever. And so that was like the only way I could test out. And I was able to build projects with it, and just like a simple UI for like doing switches and stuff.
Yeah.
But what I really wanted was to do a web deployment. At the time, Unity could do a web deployment as like an app, like a hosted app or something.
Sure.
But or applet, I guess. I think it was Java applet, maybe not. It was some kind of web implementation that they had, but their web implementation didn't support the like addressing for incorporating third-party plugins,
Okay.
and so there was no way for me to use Wise in Unity on the web. So I'm really curious. Like, did you have a host application, or
So
was there like a special? I don't know, because I always think of like it as an extension to a existing program.
yeah, so the setup we had was a web server of some kind. It's probably like a shared hosting service or something. Just FTP access. We installed the Fmod had like a HTML5. I
Okay.
think it was all JavaScript, but I had to have my friend Austin went and basically updated all the JavaScript. It is pretty like outdated even a few years ago. So I don't know if they've dropped support for it or if it's just kind of
Yeah.
minimum support sort of thing or whatever. But we did get it up and running, and as you read further into the book, line by line, you could change the music based on the page or the line of text people were reading, which is
That's really cool.
is cool. It is fun. A bummer we didn't finish it, but yeah.
I like that kind of stuff. I think those kinds of installations are really interesting.
Mm.
I like I am a big person. I'm a big soundtrack person. This is why I got into this freaking industry to begin with. And I like the idea of interactive soundtracks for books. I like the idea, I always fantasize about that sort of stuff.
Oh.
I am one of those people who likes to, like when I'm reading, put on appropriate music.
Interesting. Yeah. See, I was doing the music as well, so for me the challenge was to write something that wouldn't be distracting for people that are trying to read. I personally don't like to have music on while I'm reading, so it is extra hard, I guess. But I should release that music at some point. It's fun.
Nowadays what you could do, which is kind of really crazy, is because a lot of people have like apps or readers, on their pads or whatever. You could do eye tracking.
Yeah.
So you can do eye tracking. You're like, when they get to that word,
a stinger, like
tone. Oh man.
Yeah. No, like that was kind of the stuff we wanted to do. You could reveal paragraph by paragraph is what we were going, but you could have a paragraph that's just one word if you want, and then when you click the next button, or I think just hit spacebar to like go to the next paragraph, and that was the paragraph number was our only key for like where in the music system we were. But it was really cool because I could set everything up in Fmod Studio, and I would just export the project and upload it to the server, and that was pretty much it. Like once we had a pipeline set up for it. But
that's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Fun. Yeah. So I'm open. Maybe we'll figure it out.
I'm just gonna wing it, like we can dig into those templates, and
I could do another survey. We could revisit the list. The initial
list maybe there'll be a special guest, or
maybe we'll bring someone in. Yeah, I've got a lot of people who are interested in joining us. It's all about timing for them. So.
Yeah, and I'm open to other time slots too if it helps get more folks in, or
Yeah, I don't know how this is something that I was thinking about recently. Is this particular time slot is a little bit awkward if we want people on the East Coast to join us.
That's true. Yeah,
it's a little bit late for them, and so, but yeah, I've been avoiding doing something on the weekend mostly because I feel like it would go too late or whatever. But
I feel like we found a pace where we can kind of feel like we're getting to the end after 2 hours. So
yeah, I feel done.
Which, speaking of, it's like right about now.
Anyway, so we have no plan.
No, we have a plan.
We have a plan.
We have a semblance of a plan.
The plan is to improvise. That's just like that's just jazz, right? That's just like All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for checking this out. If you survive from beginning to end, you're a hero. And we will see everyone next week or the next time this happens, whenever that may be.
Are you going to try giving a funny send-off this time, or?
Oh, was I supposed to? Oh, that's right. We talked about that last time. Hi, fam.